As a songwriter, he's penned such classics as Wild Thing, Angel of the Morning, and I Can't Let Go. As a singer, he's released almost 24 albums and is a regular on the Americana charts. Our guest this week is Chip Taylor on the VVN Music Podcast. Hi, and welcome to episode 29 of the VVN Music Podcast. I'm Roger Wenk, and our guest today is singer and songwriter Chip Taylor. Born James Wesley Voigt, Chip is the brother of actor Jon Voigt. He got his start in the music business in a rockabilly band during the late 50s, and throughout the 60s, he concentrated more on songwriting, even though he had a minor regional hit in 1962 with Here I Am. It was during this decade that he wrote such songs as the Troggs' Wild Thing, Merilee Rush's Angel of the Morning, the Hollies' I Can't Let Go, and Janis Joplin's Try. At the dawn of the 70s, Chip signed with Buddah and later Warner Brothers for a series of albums, but in 1980, he decided to take a hobby, gambling, full-time. He didn't return to music until 1996 with the album Hitman, and has released on average an album per year since that time. Chip's latest, A Song I Can Live With, is being released on Friday, February 17th. We talked to Chip from his home in Manhattan. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the new album. I look back and you've been really prolific over the last, since 1996 when you came back to music with 16 albums. What keeps inspiring you?
Oh, I don't know. Was it that many albums? I don't know. That's what I do. I pick up the guitar and stuff starts to come out and I'm trying to get a feeling of where I like it very quickly or I don't. And usually the sign of that is usually a physical emotion, something that really touches me and gives me some kind of physical sensation. And then if it does, then I continue with it. Doesn't mean have to be anything smart or anything like that. I oftentimes don't know what is going to erupt into if there's going to be any message there or not. But if the line that comes out in the beginning gives me something that gives me that physical thing, then I try to continue to figure out what it is. And I've gotten a lot of those recently. It was like when I first heard music, when I first heard country music, when I first heard my mom and dad babysat me at a Broadway play when I was about 7 years old, and I fought them every step of the way. I knew I liked music, but I went to that play, and I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be with my friends at home. And when the orchestra started to play, it just took over my whole body in a physical sensation. And on the way home, I didn't want to talk to my mother and father. I wanted them to think I was sleeping so that I could keep feeling the same feeling I had when I first heard country music. So that's kind of what I'm in it for, is to get that kind of feeling and not to let my brain out of it as much as possible.
When you first started out, I know that your first, I'll say, professional experience was in a rock band. Were you the first person to go into a creative endeavor?
I was always interested in music, and it wasn't a rock band. It was a rockabilly country band. I was invited to. The leader left, and I was invited to take over the band when I was 15 years old. That was a big thing for me. I had bandmates that they needed songs, and I needed to write for them, and they were good guys, and it was a wonderful spirit, and we ended up signing with King Records right away. And so that was all a really wonderful experience, and it was certainly I owe a lot to the lead guitar player who invited me into the band. As the lead singer was leaving that week, he said, "You can take over if you can learn three chords by Thursday," and I was in.
Earlier you said that, talked about your writing and your inspiration. I read that the song Senorita Falling Down, you said that you just turned on the recorder and the song just flowed out in one burst. How does that happen? How do you have the inspiration to have it just come out and not have to make any adjustments down the line?
Well, it's only happened a few times. I can remember it kind of happened with Angel of the Morning back a while ago, although it took me a long time to get that thing started. But once it got started, it wrote itself very fast. Another song I wrote like that was Your Name Is On My Lips again. That's a song I wrote for Carrie Rodriguez and I. In these instances, when in Senorita Falling Down, it was like more I was starting to play some chords that really sounded nice to me, and it was a different way than I would have played them in the past. So it had my attention, and it was giving me a little bit of a chill. So I just kept repeating it, and I put the thing in record, and the words came out, and it sounded really kind of nice to me. So that's one of them that worked that way.
You've also said that a lot of times when you do your writing, it's kind of stream of consciousness. How so?
Well, it's like that. It's like just like Senorita Falling Down is the ultimate of stream consciousness. Stuff just comes out and you say you like it, and that's it. I don't look for anything from the brain for a long time. I'm sure there are emotions that are guiding me, but there's certain ways words play on top of melody that if they hit it in a certain way, it can give me something special. And so stream of consciousness would be just to let nothing get in the way of that, and not identify or not try to magnify the words and the meaning. Either never do it or do it very late in the game. So, in other words, just be picking up a guitar, and then I remember walking down the street once, and all of a sudden the song "That's How I Love You Tonight" from an album I like very much, "Block Out the Sirens of This Lonely World," about 4 years ago. I started singing this in the street without the guitar, and I said the words were, "I hope you're all right. I hope nothing's wrong. I hope every day begins and ends with a old John Prine song. And I hope you cry if you need a tear till all the hurt inside just disappears." Well, when that came out, I didn't know what exactly I was saying, but I knew it brought such emotion. And my eyes were very misty, and all of a sudden I was so into what the song was saying, how precious it was, and I wanted to continue as soon as I could, and I did. And as soon as I got back from the gym, I finished it, and it was one of my favorite songs. But I had no idea what it meant when it first came out, but I liked it.
A lot of your songs are kind of steeped in storytelling. Are these all people that you've met in real life, or are some fictional?
I'd say it's half and half. Like I have one of my favorite songs is a song called "Hey Lou" from the new album, and there are a couple of people in there that I know who they are, but I just changed their names. But there are some people in there, their names are real, and it felt okay to do that.
It is one of the cases of that Little Angel Wings, which I understand is inspired by a real-life rec center coach.
Yeah. In fact, I just saw last night my iPod. I'm trying to get footage of him, and all of a sudden I realized I had some footage from a few months ago that I didn't know. Yeah, it was, well, I didn't mention him by name in it, but he has a name, and off the top of my head I can't remember. But he has a name, wonderful guy. But I just didn't mention him by name. But he's specifically the guy, that wonderful guy, that he gives time to the kids and helps them in a nice way.
You also have Los Alamitos story, which is about a horse trainer. Is that another person that you've met? I love that song so much. I started to get ready to play it. I'm sure I just got back from Norway, and I didn't play it. I want to play it because it's so right and it's so me. It's John Cooper. Oh, John Cooper is a real guy, and he really owned that horse named Moonist. And Moonist really did win the big race there last year. And that whole thing of me looking at him on the television screen and watching his reaction to it was so powerful to me. So he's the hero of that song, and rightfully so. Good guy. You mentioned being over in Scandinavia. You seem to have a real connection with a number of artists and producers over there. How did you start working with Gora? Is it Goran or Goran Greeny? Joran, okay. Joran, yeah. Well, it all started with the tragedy at Utoya when the kids were killed back 6 years ago. And Joran and I were playing. I had just hired Joran to do an album with me. And the first time I had met him, we were recording in Athletic Studios in Halden, Norway, one of my favorite places to be. And the album was called All the Perfect People, and it was just finished. And then the Down on the Farm Festival was about to begin. I guess it was a month later. And Joran was there with me. And Joran had played for a while with Paul Flota, who he's kind of a hero singer over there. He was the lead singer of one of the all-time greatest rock bands there, Midnight Choir, who is currently on tour, a revival kind of a thing. But he just played with me and on Down on the Farm, and then when the tragedy happened on the first day of the festival, I kind of organized all the bands to put together a concert for the victims, and I wrote a song
and asked Paul to sing on it with me and Joran to play on it, and we bonded from that. We played that night at in one of the conference centers for the victims, and got to bond with them a little bit, and then played it in churches and stuff like that. So my whole strong feelings for all those folks came from a very unusual time and a sad time, and one that I feel very blessed to have been part of, witness the strength of the Norwegian people and the kindness they had for each other and the uplifting spirit they had to get themselves through this kind of thing. It was different, and it was great. So I was part of that spirit, and those guys became my very good friends.
Is that the same situation, again, excuse me if I'm not pronouncing the name correct, but of Håkan Olsen?
Yeah, we're all, even though he's from Malmo and the other guys are from Halden, Malmo, Sweden, the other guys are from Halden, Norway, they're all very respectful for each other. There's a beautiful music scene that flows on in Norway and Sweden, and Håkan represents it in Halden in Sweden with his company called Rootsy. In Norway, the primary music town in Norway is Halden, and Tom Sheklasetta and so many great musicians are part of Halden. A girl named Hege and her boyfriend Omar, they're all part of that, and the great musicians. So we all gather there often, and there's a great recording studio, so we make records there. So there's a wonderful tie between those people you just mentioned. They're like brothers.
You two were over in Scandinavia regularly?
Yeah, I just got back. I did a long tour over there, 3-week tour. I just got back, and I loved it. It was a special tour. I was mainly introducing him to this album, but it seems like since I was over there last, something's happened to the spirit. Like they gave me a wonderful award before I got into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I go to eat in Halden at one restaurant particularly all the time. It's an Indian restaurant called Butts, and they had all of the musicians and that were associated with that Norway with Halden, maybe 20 people there at a special presentation to me about a year and a half ago, where they roped off an area and then said from now on, then this is the Chip Taylor table, and we'd sit at his table. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. The spirit's very strong for me there, so I very reverent when I come there to play.
You said that the song Crazy Girl is kind of a tribute to the wonderful and soulful ladies, I think was the way that you put it, which you've worked. Who are some of those great ladies?
Well, Lucinda Williams, Carrie Rodriguez, Kendall Carson, P.P. Arnold, great folks.
What's the story behind the song Whisper Amen? I believe that was one that you wrote for your wife.
Mm-hmm. Well, my wife, Joan, she lost her little jewelry store this last year. She went bankrupt. She had to find something else to do with her time, and she's a doer, and she never complains about anything, and she's kind to everybody. So she and a couple of her friends decided to donate some of their time to help teach some underprivileged kids how to read better. And one of the ways my wife did it was to connect. She used the old game of Hangman. You ever know that game?
Yep.
And so she used that. And all of a sudden, the kid that she was trying to teach and not making too much headway, all of a sudden she came alive with the game with Joan. And in fact, Joan is there today, I was just thinking. And so it's a wonderful thing to see people do something for other people like that.
I also understand she's was responsible for the title of the album, A Song I Can Live With.
Yeah, right. When she just came over with me to Holland, and to Norway and Sweden. She came over for 5 days, and she's a big star there. I tell the stories of writing Joan for her, and the story about the title, how she didn't like the original title, and we changed it to that. So, I love that her standing up for her emotions helped me guide me to that song. I think it's a special song.
You mentioned that you had started out in a band in the 50s, but through the 60s you were primarily known as a songwriter. Were you also still trying to perform at that time, or were you concentrating on the songwriting? Yeah,
I wasn't trying to be a star then, or I wasn't trying to make my mark as a recording artist. Throughout the 60s, I had my try doing that in the late 50s a little bit, and it didn't work too good. I actually had one fairly big record on Warner Brothers called Here I Am. I think it was 1961 or something like that. That might have done more for me had it not been for the fact that Glenn Campbell came out with a song of the same name the same week. And it was kind of funny. I opened the trade paper. I said, what the heck is this? You know, we both were picked. And Glenn's didn't do that good, but it did a little bit better than me. He was much more known than me. But mine did very, very good in certain markets. It went to number one. So without Glenn's record around, I think mine would have been quite big. But it wouldn't have made any difference. I'm glad it happened the way it did. And I got fully entrenched in writing songs for other people. I loved that part of my career. And then after the 60s, I started recording. I did 3 albums for Warner Brothers, which will be released again in a couple of months, along with a performance at Armadillo World Headquarters with a full band in 1974. So that's going to be nice to have that out there. Sorry to say it's not going to be in vinyl. They were in vinyl. I was just over in Norway to, what is it called? Big Dipper or something like that. Do you know that store?
I'm not aware of it.
It's called the Big Dipper. It's the number one store in Scandinavia. Not a huge store, but number one store. Very nice people. They had me sign one of the artists over there, the lead singer of Midnight Choir, is also quite a well-known artist on his own, and he just did a trilogy of songs. And the first part of the trilogy was Chip Taylor songs. The second part, who was it? I can't remember. The third part was Towns Van Zandt. And so when I was at that store, they had me sign a whole bunch of vinyl over there. And I thought, geez, all of a sudden I got the spirit. I want to put out some more vinyl. I don't know if I can afford it, but I was thinking maybe I'd have some manufactured over there for my next tour or something. But yeah, well, it seemed like something. They were telling me the story of their store and how it started as they had a lot of vinyl and it was half and half, but they had the best vinyl thing in Norway. And then some other stores started to do more and more vinyl, and then within this year they just got rid of all the CDs they had and they just concentrated on vinyl, and they're having the best year they've ever had.
You know, when you start walking into stores like Barnes & Noble and they have a fairly large section of vinyl, you know it really is starting to make an impact.
Yeah, right.
I believe your first major hit, per se, beyond what you had on your own, was Johnny Tillotson's Worry in 1964.
I wouldn't know. I don't remember that. I remember that it was. I'd never, it was a top 10 hit, but I wouldn't say that was something that I remember as being earth-shattering or something that changed the playing field.
That was more a wild thing.
Well, let me see. That was more. I think that thing happened a little bit before that, and then finally came out and happened. So I knew about that going on for a couple of years, and I guess right around that time, Here I Am my record had come out and been on the charts, and then all of a sudden I was getting all these recordings down in Nashville by Chet Atkins, because he was also the head of A&R down there, and I would sell those songs, like the song for Johnny Tillotson, and most of my songs I was selling for $30 in the early 60s. And then all of a sudden Chet heard one of my songs and told the publisher, it was a little publisher, he said to him, the publisher called me in to read me the note. He said, "Dear Jerry," the publisher was Jerry Teifer, he said, "I'm cutting that song you sent down. It's very hard for me to believe." And I said, "I've never heard of Chip Taylor before. It's very hard for me to believe he's from New York. But wherever he's from, I want to hear every song he writes." And that was it for me. That really single-handedly got me into business, because he cut that with the Brown family, cut another one with Eddie Arnold, and then he cut another one with John Loudermilk, did another one with the Brown family, and all of a sudden, and later Bobby Bare recorded mine, and Waylon and Willie and Johnny Cash, and so, but the whole emphasis of my career was country. I was a country writer from Yonkers, New York, and that is how I got into business. I started to write some rock and roll songs right around When You Said, 1964. And the influence of my mom and dad had a Motorola radio in the room, and so I could hear country music for the first time on that, and hear the blues records on that, and so that shaped me, listening to country music and blues music. So I ended up having some pretty big hits starting right around then, and rhythm and blues field, as well as pop field, and as well as the country field.
You know, when I was in my early teens and kind of searching around for something to really sink my teeth into, I became fascinated with popular music, and one of the first records that really stood out to me was Merilee Rush's Angel of the Morning. It was different from other things you heard on the radio. It had a certain sophistication about it that I really liked. How did you come to write that song?
Well, again, I'm like a stream of consciousness writer, and I pick up my guitar oftentimes and write walking down the street. I believe that the day I wrote that, I had first heard a version of Ruby Tuesday that might have snuck on the airwaves before it broke wide open. And I was thinking that there really wasn't anything that was popular that as a ballad that sounded powerful to me. It sounded real to me. And I kind of felt like I wanted to write something like that. And so I used the same chords that I had used for Any Way That You Want Me and I Can Make It With You, which I had written a little bit earlier. You know, by that time I was starting to experiment into some major sevenths and stuff like that, and Burt Bacharach-ish kind of things. But on that day I went right back to my basic kind of things that I did and stayed in that room for a while, and all of a sudden this song blasted out. It took a while to get the first lines going, but once the first line came out that made sense to me, it just gave me such a chill, and the rest of the song wrote fast, and I loved it. And I played for Al Gorgoni, who I was recording Evie Sands with, the amazing singer Evie Sands, who was Dusty Springfield's favorite all-time singer, and just an unbelievable hard luck girl from that period of time. And we produced a version of it with her, and the company Cameo Parkway went bankrupt the week it shipped, so that even though the record was number one every place played, there were no records to be had, and so it was a dead record. And Tommy Cogville and Chip Moman asked me if it'd be all right to cut it with Merilee Rush. And after trying to figure out how to revive Evie's, we said okay. And so they did a wonderful record. It became the first big hit, but Evie's was the hard luck girl. She should have had the first hit.
You recorded albums in the 70s, and then I think right around 1980 you dropped out and you became a professional gambler. Were you just kind of tired of the music business at that time?
Yeah, well, it was very, very political. If you were when I went back to singing songs, I was writing, my songs started out, I was a successful country writer, but then all of a sudden became a successful rock writer and a successful rhythm and blues writer. And so I was doing all of that, and I loved every minute of it, and I certainly was inspired to do it. But when I sang my own songs, I kind of went back to my folkish way of doing things. And I had, you might call folk rock kind of records, but there was a lot of country embedded in the feeling I was putting into those records. And when you did that, when I was signed to Buddah Records with Gasoline, and then I had the 3 Warner Brothers album, Last Chance This Side of the Big River, and Some of Us, you always needed the help from the Nashville division. And Warner Brothers, in fact, did not have a national division. They tried to start it with me. They did okay, but they weren't a fully formed country music division while I was on the label, and it was a little hard to make a lot of penetration. Then I went to Columbia, and it was always the thing that the people who ran those divisions, they wanted as much autonomy as they could get. Now, they had to report to the main president of the companies, but they also had their own opinions, very strong opinions, and one of the things that they really kind of had intact, all those labels back then, is they wanted artists who were on their label to deal with their division. And I was signed to the pop division, and the pop division asked the country divisions to help. And it wasn't such an easy, good old boys neighborhood, that part from the pop division to the country division. And I was in the middle of all that, and trying to make the records the way I wanted to make them, not the way kind of a factory thing that was developing in Nashville wanted to make their records. And so, for those kind of reasons. I was also a gambler up until that point, a very good one. I had learned to count cards when I was writing Wild Thing and Angel of the Morning. I could do that quite easily, and when they banned me from all the casinos in Atlantic City, I turned my sights on horse race handicapping, which at first I wasn't good at, and I got to be great at that by studying with a master. And so throughout that period of time, in the late 60s and 70s, I was doing very well with another occupation, gambling. I liked doing them both at the same time. It was fun to come into the office in New York and write a song and have the bookie call me and, make my bets, and it couldn't have been a better life. But then when the struggle happened, I started betting the struggle with the relationship with the New York branch of the record company and the Nashville branch. When that struggle ensued, I started backing away a little bit and gambling more. And so in 1981, I just pretty much, to all extents and purposes, stopped. I was on Capitol Records, and I had a deal to keep going, and I just said, stop. And I gambled. And 15 years later, I found myself playing music for my mother when she was seriously ill. And that was something, to pick up the guitar again and write a song for my mother, and instead of going to the track, going to see her. And that week or two that I did that, just changed my life. And I called my gambling partner and said, my gambling partner's from New York, the biggest horse race handicapper winner of all time, wonderful family man. I called him, I said, Ernie, I said, his name was Ernest Dahlman. I said, you're not going to believe this. I said, but I got the spirit back to make music, and I know I can't do both, so I'm going to quit gambling right now and just start to ease my way back into writing songs and hope somebody wants to hear me play them. And that's what I did and been doing ever since.
Last year, you were honored with induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. That had to have been one of the crowning achievements of your career.
I would say up until that point, one of the most wonderful moments is when they presented me with a plaque, I think I told you, in Halden, Norway. And it was just a plaque they wanted to give me, kind of in honor of me being there and doing whatever I did with the horror of Utoya and stuff like that. I think it was in that spirit, but more because I was, an honorary Norwegian or something like that. And that was very important to me because it was given to me in such a warm spirit. So I was always thinking that nothing could ever top that. The way the plaque read in Norway is that I had written a song for Willie Nelson called He Sits at My Table, which Paul Flota, the lead singer of Midnight Choir, had recorded in his retrospective of Chip Taylor's songs, which was up for a Grammy. So He Sits at My Table was one of the prominent songs in that album, and the plaque said, we sit at his table, the Chip Taylor table. And it was just beautiful. It made me cry and everything like that. So this award, Paul Writer Song of Fame, it's in that same spirit, no greater or no less. The wonderful thing about, being at the Songwriters Hall of Fame, first of all, you don't get an award or a pat on the back of it. It isn't for the guidance of friends and people who helped you along the way. So I know that, and I got lots of friends to thank for any success I ever had. But the wonderful thing about that show was that to see the true humbleness of all these people, and I never really saw that because I wasn't hanging around with Elvis Costello. I was a loner. And I didn't know Tom Petty and Lionel Richie. I didn't know these folks, so all of a sudden to be in their midst and talking to them and hearing their stories, well, it was totally different than I had envisioned it over all those years. An example would be when Lionel Richie, I was kind of mad at him because I said, well, how could you have all these couple of big hits, 3 Times a Lady and then a couple of more, and leave the Commodores that were with him? I didn't understand that. I said, well, I might have done something like that, but if I did, it would have been wrong. So I kind of held it against him. And then I found out, meeting him and seeing him at the show, that the truth of the matter was he didn't leave the Commodores. They didn't want to continue with him. So he was very humble and kind, and I bonded with Elvis, Elvis was always a guy that could do a million things. I always I always resonated with the folks that could do something simple like Willie Nelson or Johnny Cash or Jimi Hendrix, or people who just kind of did one spirited thing, but Elvis was all over the place. And then all of a sudden when I got to meet him, I realized he had written some of the greatest things. I just did a little back work on his songs, and I said, Jesus, I didn't know he wrote that or that. So I came in there with a different opinion, and same with Tom Petty. He got up on the stage and he just sang from his heart like an old 50s entourage on the stage, and it wasn't flashy California pop. It was just beautiful. And so all of a sudden my affection and my appreciation of those people was very, very strong, and I realized that you can go through this life pretty jaded unless you really open your eyes, and that was an eye-opener for me. It was a good one.
I have to say that I've had the opportunity to probably interview 50 or 60 different artists, and their public persona, or how we perceive them, as you said, is very different. I've found that musicians far and wide, with very few exceptions, are really nice, gracious, and grateful people for what the public has done for them.
Uh-huh. That's nice. Very nice. Well, that's what I felt that night. It was a nice feeling.
Well, listen, I want to congratulate you on the new album. I wish you all the luck in the world with it.
Well, thanks.
I hope we get to talk again soon.
I do as well. It was very nice. I appreciate it very, very much.
Chip Taylor's album, A Song I Can Live With, will be available this Friday via Trainwreck Records. We'll be back soon with more editions of the VVN Music Podcast, including new talks with Michael Schenker and Steve Hackett. Remember that you can hear the VVN Music Podcast via iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and the VVN Music website. For the latest news on the veteran artists of rock, pop, soul, country, folk, and blues, go to vvnmusic.com. If you have any comments or questions about the website or this podcast, please send them to vvnnetwork@gmail.com. Our theme music is performed by Yahar. This program was recorded on February 20th, 2017. The VVN Music Podcast is a production of the VVN Network, copyright 2017.